Hello, everyone. Welcome to Uncorked with Holli
And Jeanna.
And guess what, Jeanna?
I know.
We have a magical soul in the Uncorked house.
Exactly. And we have been waiting for this conversation for, well, just enough time. Just enough time. We're not putting any more judgment on time, but just in time.
I love that, Jeanna. Yeah. We're reforming.
We're reforming.
We're learning every day.
Absolutely.
All right, everyone. Straight from the UK, we have Helen Grace MacGregor. She's an intuitive author, soul mentor, and facilitator on a mission to gently empower creative, soulful women.
Uh-huh.
We'll see if we live in that category. To live a life that lights them up. Well, this lights us up, Jeanna.
Yeah.
Her being here lights us up.
For sure.
So that together we have a brighter, more creative world. She's a curious, creative, and courage catalyst.
Ooh.
I love that.
I am. And, you know, I think courage is one of the things that is under appreciated and under sold. Yes.
Not that we're selling anything today, but
yeah.
I mean, honestly, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I know she's going to talk about that. She's the author of The Magical Unfolding, and she's now editing. I think she finished editing, and we're going to talk about it. The Midlife Awakening, her next book, which she's combining her knowledge and experiences into a body of work to help us get what matters done. Jeanna,
Ooh.
We could get more stuff done.
Yeah. Got to figure out what matters, though, first.
I know. Well, we should talk about that, too. I think she can help us there. She is a guide. So she's also recently discovered that she has been living with ADHD for her life. And we're going to talk about how that's impacted her.
Yeah. And
she is definitely a soul sister in the house, Jeanna.
She is.
All right. Welcome, Helen Grace MacGregor, to Uncorked.
Hi, Helen.
Hi. Thank you for having me. You know when you hear an intro and you're like, wow, she sounds really cool. I don't know who she is. But
Yeah.
It's you.
It is you,
Yay.
my dear. Yes. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh, we're thrilled to have you. So typically, Helen, we start our podcast with an opportunity for you to share with our audience a little bit more about you, like kind of those core tenets of who you are, the things that really define you that I think will help kind of ground our conversation today before we get into all the goodness that you have created in the world.
Thank you. So let's just start by saying, since I discovered I have ADHD, I am going to fully own the fact that I may well answer questions in an extremely circuitous route that takes us all over the place.
I love that.
I'll do my best to maybe stick to some
if there is a person who wanders in the woods, it's Miss Holli.
I can't go straight.
Winds around, and she gets there eventually, but she winds around. So listen, you're in good company.
Yes.
I adore that. There is a reason I have this kind of spiral. You can't really see it, but I have like a spiral on my arm.
It is gorgeous. Everybody go to YouTube and actually see her beautiful tattoo. It is gorgeous.
Tattoo. It's really hard to show.
Yeah.
You.
It's perfect. Unfold your magic. See, she is a magical soul, Jeanna, and we love magic. We uncork it. All right. Okay, and you've got it on your arm. I love that.
Yeah,
Maybe we should do that.
Yeah. So I essentially have been on a spiraling, winding, somewhat crazy journey through life, and I've worn a lot of hats, and they stem from being, I guess I've kind of come full circle in a way. I started off as a very cheerful, very smiley, very open, very intuitive child who could sense and feel and see all kinds of things. And then somewhere along the way, the sparkle kind of got, taken out quite early, actually. Early teens. By early teens, I was already numbing against the pain of feeling and seeing too much, and not actually, now looking back, I'm like, okay, I really wasn't seen, heard, or understood, and I acted up big time. Also, of course, I now know I was probably seeking dopamine. So I kind of disconnected from myself, and I went through a period of time I call the wilderness years, because I sort of lost a few years doing not great things. And then a friend of mine died quite young. My voice always goes when I talk about her. And it was like the first time I heard a voice in my head, and the voice said, "Would you feel cheated if you died tomorrow?" And that was the moment, the first moment at which I started to probably a lot more proactively take charge of my life. I've been kind of self-supporting since the age of 18. And I started my journey into taking charge of my life by following my head rather than my heart, because all I ever really wanted to do was help people on write. And what I actually ended up doing was training. I actually started out as a nurse student, and then that wasn't working for me because I used to get told off for speaking to patients. It was much more about cleaning and paperwork and not very soul satisfying. And so I trained as a radiographer, did a 3-year degree in radiography, kind of knew halfway through that I hated it, plowed on anyway. It's like, I'll get a science degree, it will be fine. And in an effort to make it fit, I then specialized and did another 2 years training in ultrasound. And because I was very much trying to make myself fit into something that was completely misaligned, I just ended up completely burning out, breaking, and then really starting to tune into what I wanted to do. And honestly, it's been this ever winding breadcrumb trail ever since. And my first kind of foray back from that head-led place back towards doing something a lot more soul-led, a lot more intuitive, was I started to train in Shiatsu, which was another 3 years. There's a theme here. I love learning and studying and endlessly curious about the human condition. And so then I had this interesting parallel. Like I knew a lot about Western medicine. I'd worked in trauma quite a lot. And then I got to actually start my self-employed career in sort of a more Eastern medicine-based way. And I was working with all of my former colleagues, and I kind of became, the Shiatsu practitioner in my area for the service sector people. So like doctors, nurses, radiographers, police, teachers. And I've spent years helping people shift from their head to their heart, and from kind of chaos to calm. And then eventually, long story short, having trained in quite a few more things and realized I wanted to help more people than I could work with one-to-one, I ended up writing the book that, I'd wanted to write a book since I was about 8 years old. I am a writer in my core. Like, I live and breathe words. I adore words. I always have done. And so I'm kind of now in a place where we may get into over the conversation. A lot has changed and shifted in my life in all, like, all the cards up in the air, let's start again, sort of thing. And now I really get to kind of enter the third chapter, if you like, where I am choosing very consciously to put all of my faith in writing front and center, and let everything else unfold and emerge from there. So that's where I am, a bit about me.
I love that. So how long did you actually exist before Shiatsu, the medical profession? How long? I mean, it sounds like you went to school, you didn't give up. How long did you stay in that space?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it feels like it was a really long time, and actually it wasn't. I think it was probably about 8 years. I mean, it is a fair amount of time.
That's a long time.
Interestingly, in Chinese medicine, they talk about 7, 8 year cycles. So, yeah. And I knew it wasn't right, but I just kept trying to make it fit.
Right. But we all do that.
We all do it. Absolutely.
I have said that from the very beginning. I went into accounting. All right. I'm the least likely accountant on the planet. Okay. And can I do math? I guess I can, but I socialize myself into doing it well. Okay. It doesn't come natural to me, but I forced myself to do that. And it's soul sucking.
It is.
Even if I work with the most delightful people on the planet, I think that that's what kept me going for quite a while. And of course the money. But we do make those choices. And then, I don't know, in my midlife, I woke up. You know, I had the wild awakening.
In a major way.
Yeah, so you probably are going to talk about that too and help people. But if we have audience members who are younger that if it's not working, I mean, I don't care how many years you studied for it. There's a reason why you studied for it. And maybe even you can talk to that you pulled, in fact, you did sort of talk to it. You pulled things from Western medicine to help you with your Eastern medicine. And that having that in your toolbox with the East and West is so important. And so I think maybe the point is that for people who are listening is never second guess yourself. I used to make myself wrong, like, oh, I like this and then I like that and then I like that, and it's so Gemini, like you know, you don't finish anything. And I would get yelled at for not finishing anything and yelled at that I had no follow through, and I have follow through now, but like I do jump from topic to topic to topic. And I think if you're built that way and you like that, there should be no shame in doing that.
Yeah, it's what you should do. You're designed to do that.
Yeah. So I love that part of the story. So how did you find out that you were living with ADHD?
Yeah.
That's a great question. And look, it's been a really rapid journey. So I am not by any shape of the stretch of the imagination going to pretend that I'm an expert. I'm really in it at the moment. I'm really in it, learning it and remembering things and coming to realizations about it. And what happened was, like, I've known that I am probably neurodiverse for quite a long time. I am incredibly dyspraxic. So I've spent my entire life falling over and bashing into things and being covered in bruises and, don't inherently know my lefts and rights, which was fun as a radiographer and a sonographer, scanning, spinning 20-week-old babies and trying to work out the heart connections. No wonder I had a migraine every day. My brain was literally going, oh no, it's so moved. Hard. What do we do?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, so, I get it.
So I like a lot of people, I've known that I don't fit into the traditional boxes, and I don't know. Like, I've spent a lot of my life feeling like I'm falling short and apologizing, always feeling like I've upset people, like all kinds of traits that I now know are very much associated with ADHD. And I ended up having completely had a life shift and starting again at 50. I ended up getting my first employed role for 20 odd years since I'd come out of the NHS, National Health Service in the UK, because I was starting again in a new place and didn't really know anybody. So I got this job at a women's centre. Give them a shout out. They're called My Sister's House. They support women in challenging circumstances. Usually the majority are people who've been in abusive relationships. I started my adult life out in that position and actually had to escape, and which I wrote about in the first book. And so, I have a lot of innate understanding and a lot of passion for gently empowering women, and I knew that this was a good way to do it, but also a good way to meet people and use the strengths I had, because I ended up being a frontline key worker, and I was very much in that chaos to calm space again, and space holder, listening to people, and so slowly but surely I got to know some of the women, and I ended up coming out of the employed role and then going self-employed for the same organization to facilitate groups. And I created courses and ran this peer group called the Magical Mindset Peer Group, which was pretty cool. Don't quite know how I got away with that, but I did.
I love it.
You know, like more and more these women were coming, and they were starting to trust and starting to feel safe, and they started sharing some of the different things they were struggling with, and one by one they were talking about ADHD. And I remember thinking, you're not ADHD. Because my picture of ADHD, like a lot of people until they learn about it, is the classic kind of you know, child running around, boy running around like like a loon, if you like. Actually my little brother was like that. As a kid, he was always on the go. They actually said he was hyperactive. I don't even know if the label ADHD existed then. And because I'm curious and I like holding space and asking people questions, you know, I suspended my thoughts and just got them slowly to start sharing what they were struggling with, and how could I best support them, and how could I make the group feel safe and inclusive, and all of that kind of stuff. And they just started describing what essentially was my brain. And you know, you're sort of sitting there like holding space, mask is on, game face is on, so they cannot see the tumultuous penny dropping moments that are happening in my being, where I'm listening and just going, oh my goodness. And so I started to research it. I had a conversation with my sister, who was like one of my closest friends. She's younger than me. She said, funny thing, Helen, I didn't really want to tell anyone about this, but I'm actually waiting for a diagnosis myself on the NHS. And again, you know, just through the process of, she supported me a lot. Actually, she gave me lots of resources, things to look at, places to take online tests, and they are like the first tests I've done in my life where I've got 100% pretty much without any effort. Just like, I'm rocking this ADHD business.
I am really good at this ADHD thing. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I'm my 14, like, yeah. And then, you know, I'll be completely honest, you know, I am a really honest person. I do not have a lot of money at the moment. I'm not rolling in it, and I just didn't care. I was like, I cannot wait the 3 or 4 years it will take me to get a national health diagnosis. I've already waited 52 years. I know that the diagnosis isn't the end all and be all, but for me, it just felt like I needed, once I'd cottoned onto this, I couldn't get it out of my head, and I just needed to know that I wasn't being completely delusional, even though I really knew that it would be a confirmation. So I kind of realized in July that it might be a thing, and then I got diagnosed in November. So at the time of recording this, I am 5 weeks into that diagnosis.
Wow.
So what has that meant for you as you've been kind of replaying your history and your past? Like, what has that meant for you in terms of knowing this information and your history? What has it taught you about yourself or maybe your history that would be important for our audience to hear?
I love that question. It's such a good question, because I think that's the thing I feel most passionate about, even though it's really early on in the journey for me. Because for me, firstly, having given myself, I think this is also important to speak to, I gave myself a good 2 weeks to shut the doors. You know, I showed up and did what I needed to do. I have a part-time job for a charity here. I still showed up and did that job 2 days a week. But other than that, I'm like, I'm in my cave. I just gave myself 2 weeks to really be with the feelings, which initially were a lot of grief and a lot of pain. And thankfully, having been a body worker for years, and, you know, also I am a trained Koya teacher and yoga teacher, so I've learned the hard way that you have to sit with feelings, you have to, and then you have to kind of move them through your body. So I did that initially, and I think because I let myself do that, what quickly followed was huge compassion for little Helen, huge love, huge compassion, huge understanding, and you know, it feels to me as if, well, number one, everything I've written about and believed in and helped other people with and facilitated over the years has been the stuff that I needed for myself, which we all know, but you don't often get so tangible a lesson.
Yeah.
And I have. And number two, it's been so freeing. It's given me permission to be me. And you don't really, of course, you know, if you can research ADHD people, you come across channels and podcasts. There's so much information and support out there. You will hear people time and time again talking about masking, and a lot of people say what I've also experienced to be true, which is that you actually don't realize how much you mask and how much energy you use to do that. Since this diagnosis, all of this 5 weeks that I've had with it so far, I mean, I've just completely stripped the masks off. They are gone. I don't care anymore. If I go about the houses to explain something, well, you know, I'm like, I just don't apologize for just being me anymore. And I'm not bending myself. I'm not acquiescing, you know, I'm not subjugating. I am just 100% me. And I thought I was that before, but I really wasn't, which is, you know, I'm laughing about it because it's the only way, isn't it? It's like, wow, I did such a class act. I fooled even myself.
Oh,
wow.
Well, I think it's a part of, I love it. I think it's a part of learning about ourselves as we go. I'm continually learning too. And we were at a conference and we had our Enneagrams done, and we were looking at the Enneagram, and I was like, wait a minute, am I envious? Like we had to have this whole conversation, like, who am I? And I feel like we're still figuring that. We're in the middle of figuring that out. And you're not alone in that area. And we talked ahead earlier before we started, started hitting record, and ADHD, ADD, there's a lot of treasures there. And when you were talking about masking, I was like, okay, masking. Okay, because one of my children has ADD. I think, Nikon, he was on one of our podcasts. You go back and listen. And what I saw was, and he wasn't diagnosed either when he was young, and what I saw was he developed superpowers because of that. And so you have superpowers. I'm going to say, I don't know you. I mean, we just met and we're happy to know you now. But you are and very resilient. You are creative. That's the other thing. My son's super creative. And it's like and when we want to talk about the intuition, whether that's kind of, you're intuitive and you've taken all these superpowers to help all these amazing women, and you're continuing to do that. It's amazing. I love this story, and I just think that the story's continuing to unfold. It'll be fascinating to talk in a year from now what happens.
Well, and it is,
it's good.
I think about, like, when you are no longer masking who you are and you're fully embracing you and those superpowers. I completely agree. I think people with ADHD, their mind is extremely sharp and very creative and phenomenal with words. So it doesn't surprise me that writing is your love, and words you've obviously always had an affinity for words, and your website is just a beautiful representation of that. It truly is. So it'll be interesting to see now that you've stepped into that, how you change and how how much Helen are we going to get? Like, how much more Helen are we going to get, right? So I don't know. It's just, it's exciting to,
I think it's exciting.
It's exciting.
It's
to
like
think
a
about
new beginning.
For you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It is. And it's, you know what? It's not often in life, is it, that you get to have a complete do-over? And
yeah,
I have had that in spades, actually, because you know, the big life change that I kind of, the second book is not it's not necessarily autobiographical in the sense that there isn't a trail that talks about this. It's more sharing downloaded words that will support people through that process of the midlife crisis that I call an awakening. But one of the things that I touch upon in it is that my long marriage ended really unexpectedly, and of course I was devastated. It's taken me a good 3 years to get my head around that. Even that, the ADHD diagnosis has given me permission to be okay with the fact it's taken me so long, because now I know that a lot of people with ADHD have rejection sensitivity dysmorphia, which basically means, you know, like, we physically feel the pain of being rejected, which I was. And logically I knew that we weren't happy, but that doesn't matter. Like, my emotions, it's taken me such a long time to step up. But at the same time, I had that sense of, once I'd got over the initial shock, because it did kind of literally knock me to my knees, you know, sobbing wreck on the floor for a few days. It was only a few months before I started to think, you know, actually, I get to reinvent now. I get to do that thing, and it's been really tough and really hard. But you know, I've then got this ADHD diagnosis as well at you know, over the age of, not much over the age of 50, but over the age of 50. So I've been given a double invitation for a do-over. I mean, it's pretty cool, and it's. I feel bad in a way saying that, because one of my friends kind of came out to me with having ADHD, because I do feel a bit like I've come out with it. And, you know, bless him, he's a psychologist, he's a really successful coach, he does some incredible work, he holds men's groups, like, he's an amazing soul, but he is struggling big time. You know, he is really struggling, and for him it's a curse. And so I recognize that for some people, their truth in this moment is that it's a curse. And I, you know, take nothing away from anyone's experience, but for me, I am leaning into it, and I'm very much embracing it, as I feel like there's a space of huge possibility. My hashtag for next year is permission to play, because it's like, oh great, now I'm like, okay, great, my brain loves dopamine, so therefore I'm not saying yes to anything anymore that I'm not excited about, because what's the point? My brain hates it, so why even bother? So
I love that. Well, we have some rules we live by, and one of them is, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. It's a hell no. So only do the hell yeses, Helen. I love that.
It's so interesting. I just want to pull back for a moment and comment on the curse part, because he has his journey. Everybody has it. But if you're a parent and you have children with it, please don't think like that. It's actually a gift. And, you know, but it's easy in our school system for it to not look like a gift, because these children show up slightly differently. And, you know, there's the stereotypical bouncing around, but then there's the one like my son that doesn't get lit up. He's the ADD version of and they've blanketed it all together now, but it doesn't show up the same for everybody. But it may not look like a gift at the time, but it is a gift. And that's why I'm excited to see what happens with you and really your friend. It'll be interesting to see how that progresses and how he is able to integrate that and help people more. Once, you know, we suffer when we resist what is. And we don't have to be a title of that either, but you know, like, that suffering is something that we self-impose. So I love the fact that it's playtime, and that, you know, you are honoring your brain, honoring it, and doing what it loves. So let me ask you, when did you find your intuition back? How did you lost it in your early teens? How did you come home? I'm assuming you came home to that intuition now.
Yeah. I mean, my first return to that was that voice saying, would you feel cheated if you died tomorrow? I don't know, like I knew that voice had come from somewhere, and I knew I had to follow it. And I don't know that I was doing it consciously at that stage, but I definitely did start. I mean, I started to hear the messages and hear and feel the feelings in my body that were telling me intuitively whether a course was right or wrong. It was just on delay, you know. So like I said, I still ended up going down the road of doing this degree.
Right.
And it took a year and a half before the intuition kicked in and I heard it, and I still plowed on. So it did kick in. I think, you know, I started to listen to it more actually when I started to bring back daily writing and daily journaling, and then particularly when I really formalized that practice, and I recognized that I am a writer in my core, and when I write I feel right. And so I began a morning pages practice, having had the pleasure of seeing Julia Cameron twice at workshops with Hay House, and she's the most phenomenal, irreverent, hilarious, self-deprecating, just incredible, feisty woman. I adore her. And honestly, I think I would have done morning pages anyway, just because she said do them, and I thought she was amazing, you know.
Yes.
You know, for me, I get intuitive. It comes through in felt senses, but it also, I'm an emotional generator in human design, so I feel it in my body and in my sacrum, but also in my heart. I feel it most of the places actually. And then it comes through really strongly in writing. So I will channel when I write in the mornings, and I know it's my intuition speaking to me, because I will then read it back, and you know, some of my programs have come from that process of allowing my intuition to speak. And I read these things back and I'm like, wow, I've just created an entire framework, you know. Like, that's how book one came about. I needed a linear way to explain a really non-linear process that I've seen women go through over the years I'd worked with them, and that I'd been through as well. And I was like, you know, how can I even begin? And it just came through. And I don't know if that answers the question. I think it probably does.
No,
but I feel like I veered off on a tangent somewhere there.
I love that. We'll put in the show notes for people Julia Cameron's book as well. I did the morning 100%. Pages too. I'm not a morning girl, but it was an interesting time for me. So whether you think you're creative or intuitive or not, that gets to the heart, and you have to commit. What was it, for 3 months or something? First thing in the morning.
One of the things I love is that she said she never does it without having a coffee first. So
cool. I love that.
Like, it's the first, exactly. That was the game changer for me.
I don't know whether I got a coffee. Maybe
permission for coffee.
I think I strictly just got up, sat down, and you know, at that time I was working long hours. 4 o'clock in the morning, I'd be writing my minimum of 3 pages. Wow. And it's interesting. So I'm just going to tell the audience too that you will figure out your state of mind very quickly when you do these morning pages, because if you are complaining every time you get up, or complaining about your job, you know that is an indicator of something that probably is not in alignment.
Yes.
And so so can you talk about that? Do you help people figure out what's in alignment? Do you have any advice for figuring that out?
Yeah, I do. And again, I recognize that different modalities resonate with different people. So I am a huge believer that there is, you know this clearly, you know, but a lot of people will still say their thing is the thing. No, it's not. It's the thing for a certain amount of people. So I say that as a disclaimer, and I recognize that the people who come to me tend to be the people who need a helping hand to get out of their heads and into their bodies, really. And I recognized that as a body worker. I used to do Shiatsu and craniosacral therapy, and that was a really tangible way of having people feel their way back into their body, and then it became through movement. So for me, I guess because this has been my journey, I recognize that my biggest strengths to help the women that are drawn to my energy and the way I do things tend to be those that they're missing the embodiment piece, and also it's about settling your nervous system. That's been, I've talked about chaos to calm, because I recognize that's been a theme throughout my whole life. Even as a trauma radiographer, I helped people in resus to be calm. That was just what I did. I didn't know it till I looked back, but that's what I did. And so it's kind of, for me, the route to working out what you want and stepping into alignment, just accessing your own inner knowing and learning to trust that you can't work it out with your head, and the Western world and the way it's shaped has us all living like disembodied people who just are ahead, walking around on a body that we're not connected to at all. And so, for me, the route is through embodiment, 100%. And, and stillness as well. I teach people how to meditate in probably a very non-purist meditation way, which I now understand is because I've got ADHD. Actually, I have a very different take on it that's very permission rich and very small and simple and should free. And so body, it's a body thing, and pressing pause, finding ways to stop the spinning. Again, now that I know I have ADHD, I understand why that's important for me, because my head is never quiet, and it is like a constant spinning. That I've had to learn to be able to, at times, step back from the busy head.
Yes.
Boy, we've done a few podcasts on this topic. I literally...
Embodiment.
Yeah. I feel like for a number of years, I have a head floating without... It was like there was zero connection. And I really had to go to work on that.
Well, we had a guest that tried to put it back together. She's like, I'm so distracted that I need to help you. And it was beautiful. It was such a beautiful gift. She was amazing. But that's why I was smiling when you were talking, because I was like, okay, so Jeanna was like, I have a floating head. And I was like, where am I? Okay. How do you know you have a floating head? And so since the women that are, I agree with you. The women that are coming to you for help need this. How do you know if your head is floating? How do you know if you're in your body or not? Is there a 1-2 punch on that that we could talk about?
I wish I had a really definitive answer for you.
Me too.
Honestly. It has been my experience over the years of putting my hands on people and teaching people in yoga that people will not know until someone either holds space for them in a way where they put their hands on their system and guide them into breathing into their hands on their back. There'll be an internal shift. And then they'll know. Because the thing is, the act of asking yourself if you are or not will put you in your head, and that's the irony of it. I mean, there are some ways, like if you feel like you're constantly efforting and shoulding and pushing and shoving, and I use words that aren't even English, even as a writer, logicizing. Everybody seems to know what that
I
means.
love that.
Logicizing.
No, you rebrand everything. I love it. This is so good.
I've just
This is
made
right up
that.
our Uncorked alley.
Yeah, I have a few words that I make up. But people know what I mean when I say that. Like,
Yes.
if you're trying to figure it out in your head, then you know you are probably very much in your head. You know, so there are other ways. If you feel exhausted because you're never breathing properly, then you know that you're probably not really in your body. If you feel scatty, if you feel spinny, even though as an ADHD person you might feel spinny anyway, so slight disclaimer there. But you know, if you constantly feel like you're not present for your loved ones and you're missing things because you're just not in the here and the now, you're in, I call it regret street. You're in rumination alley, or you're in regret street. You know, you're not here in this moment. You're not observing the magic of life. You know, you're not feeling the joy. But it is like it's a combination of things. I really, really wish there was a simple way to know.
That's really helpful.
And I guess if I did have that, I wouldn't have spent the last 2 decades working with this stuff and constantly evolving how I'm working to try and make it simpler, to try and make it easier. But the fact is, when you are not embodied, you're leaving behind 95% of your energy and your life force, and you're leaking power, and it's only going to go one way, and that's towards burnout, as we all know.
Yeah, I mean that's so a mic drop moment right there.
It really is.
It's interesting because I feel like we need to normalize the fact that we need more than just a medical doctor or a therapist, because therapy doesn't all get you in your body necessarily. Not all therapy. Therapy doesn't. But we need and normalize a more holistic approach to get in our body, to have higher coaches, practitioners. I know we'll talk about some of your sessions that you hold, and make that normal. Like that's a normal thing that you should check in and do, and for your mental, for your health, wellness, for your vitality, you know, and I think we need to normalize that. I love that you're talking about this, because I feel like, you know, way back when it would be like, we're not going to hire somebody like that to do, you know, and now it's like you need to be hiring a group of people that can help you progress through life, because oftentimes we can't see it ourselves, like you were saying.
Very
you
true.
know, and
to those around you that can see it.
Yeah, and unless you have an experience to shift it, and then you're like, well, how? Like how do I? Yes, but you knew, like some intuitive people know, but like it's one of those things that is super important, but we don't talk about it very often.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you know, it is rare that somebody knows, because how do you, if it's your default, if it's your normal,
how do you know?
You've got nothing to measure it against, you know, so how are you going to know? And in a way that's good, because if anyone's listening to this and really beating themselves up about the fact that they might be disembodied and, you know, they are living more in their heads, well, again, love and compassion, because it's not your fault. It's how we're trained. We are head-led from the time we go to school, and
conditioned.
We're taught to seek knowledge from outside us and all of that stuff, and we just do become disconnected unless we're somebody who has you know, an embodiment passion, you know, like somebody who goes and trains as a gymnast, or, you know, has some sort of passion that is very body led, and they are the most juicy, gorgeous souls to watch move, aren't they, through the world?
Yes.
They are
so embodied. It's just awesome to witness people who are really I would also say that it is a work in progress, so don't for 1 minute think I'm sitting here going, I've got it really sorted and I'm in my body all the time, because of course I'm not. I have to take myself back every single day. I have to remember.
I was just going to say, it's not a one and done thing. No, you have to practice being there, because
Well, because life takes you out,
Mm-hmm.
like bumps you out, and stressor will bump you out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it can, not necessarily, but it can. So it's normal being human to get in our head and out of our body, I guess. It's normal. Sure. So that the practice that you were speaking of is being conscious of that and having a practice of getting back in your body.
Right.
And or having, regular sessions to help you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one of the, if I was going to share something that is probably the simplest thing to access in terms of helping people get back in their body, honestly, it is follow the joy. It's follow what lights you up. Because if you have a 5-minute movement practice, that's putting on a song you adore and dancing around your kitchen. I have quite a few clients who tell me they dance around in their pants because that's what I've told them I do. Not so much this time of year, but when it's warmer, because it gets you in your heart. You're in your joy, and then you're in your body because your heart's in your body. So actually, we can make it really simple.
Yeah, I love that.
Yes, and it's being mindful about it and really. Like for me, it's breathing's a big deal.
That's
huge. I mean, my first tattoo says breathe. Like it's been a big deal for me for a long time. So if I can just take 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, whatever I have, and just quiet my mind and breathe, and put my hand like on my body somewhere and like feel it like. It's not hard things. It's just you have to be intentional about it. Or, certain people are, I think, more wired to stay in your head. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, absolutely. Especially us spinny-headed ADHD people.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So with your book is coming out probably in 2023, The Midlife Awakening.
Yeah. I have
second
a publication date I can share with you, actually.
Oh, do share.
When?
Because I know that you spoke to the lovely Nicola Humber, who is my publisher from Unbound Press.
Oh, I love that. Gosh, I saw that you had some connection to her.
Delightful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's who I'm publishing the second book with. She's awesome.
Oh,
I adore her.
I love that.
Actually, her podcast is the one that's out right now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Yeah. Go back and check it out because by this time this goes out. But it's live right now.
But
we had so much fun. She's a special, magical human.
She's an awesome human. She is incredible. I'm so happy you spoke to her.
Oh my gosh.
So my publication date is the 23rd of the 3rd, 23.
Oh my gosh.
That's
love brilliant.
That's great. I love that. So in the book, who is the book for? What are people in? What juicy things are they, signing up for when they go run and get the book? And I will put those in the show notes where to find it and all of that.
So I do write primarily for women, I have to say, because I know that I am here to speak for women. I was told a long time ago through a channeled message, I'm here to speak for my ancestors, for the women, because they never got to be heard and they never really got to speak. And so I have a calling to empower women, and so I work with men as well. My books aren't exclusively for women,
right?
But it's written from a female perspective because that's my lived and breathed experience, and it's what my work's been about for 2 decades. And so it's primarily for women who either feel at a crossroads in life. I called it the midlife awakening because I had a midlife awakening moment that was a real tangible kind of esoteric magical moment that I did actually write about in the first book, and I wanted to dive deeper into that. But I do define midlife as being anything from 40 up to 60 and maybe beyond or maybe before. So it's the kind of middle years where I found a lot of people experience these kind of wake-up calls or turning point moments, and it can feel as though they get really kind of lost and stuck in the messy middle and nothing makes sense. And so the second book is really for those people, for those women who find themselves in that place where they are floundering, or they're questioning everything, or they're not sure that they feel like they fit their life anymore. They're not sure, you know, who they are, even who are they. Especially, I haven't had children. That wasn't part of my journey, and so it can be for those women as well, because we still wake up and go, what do we matter when we can't do the thing that women were put on this earth for? What do we matter? How do we contribute? What's our purpose? How do we feel our life? But then also I recognize that, you know, a lot of women in midlife, if they've had children earlier, they reach that point where children are independent, and then they get to ask those questions as well. Who am I? What really matters to me? Oh God, like, what excites me? Because I don't remember even putting me first for the last 20 years. And so it's for all those people who just, they're in that transition, they're in that messy middle, they're in the quagmire and going, well, is this all there is? Because I don't think I like this, or is there more? Are there things I can do to find a way to be okay with being where I am and trusting that it's all going to change and it's all going to work out to be a beautiful, beautiful process.
I love that.
Jane Fonda talks about it. She talks about her life in chapters. Like there's this first chapter, second chapter, and then she says the final, her third chapter in life, and she kind of chunks it in, you know, every 20, 25, 30 years. I'm not really sure exactly how she defines it, but I think thinking about life in that way is helpful in terms of it almost, at least for a visual kid like me, like it gives you permission to write something different. You know, it's almost like, you know, when school would start in September, it was like a new start, right? It was like you got to hit the reset button. And so when you think about life in those chunks, you can do something very meaningful and then do something different that's meaningful. And you've got enough time to really embrace it.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I love that.
And I love that you spoke to that, because I definitely feel like I'm in the third chapter. I'm in that third act, and the book is probably going to be more for people who are sort of coming to the end of the second act. But you know, it is. There are books about the heroine's journey, which is a very different beast to the hero's journey, and there are life stages that we, if we're lucky enough to live through them, we do all go through. And I just think there's just such huge value in shared experience. You know, it normalizes things that can feel like they're completely not normal. And I've got like that. I love threes, so I know that there's a third book coming. I already know what the title is. I already know I'm publishing it with Unbound. I know exactly what it's about. I'm not going to say anything more about that, but I like triad. I like a three. So the first book had 3 sections. This book has 3 sections as well. So the first section I can't reveal. I'll do a little reveal, but the first section is like change is an inside job, and it's all about kind of training in trust, persisting with patience. I do a lot of playing with alliteration, facing your fear, recalibrating your responsibility. So it's downloaded words, it's channeled words, a lot of it. So there's a lot of poetry in it, and a bit of personal story stuff as well. And then the second section is turning points as portals. So I used to have a podcast called the Turning Point Project podcast, and I invited people to share stories of moments that changed their lives that initially they thought were a bit of a disaster. And that's where what the seed was sown for how we trust in turning points, and can I bring some of that into the book as well. So that's kind of that middle section where you've really come out of the mud and you're starting to go, oh, okay, maybe I can poke my head up a little bit and maybe there is some light above the, you know, the weeds, and maybe there's a bit of magic I can rediscover here. So that's kind of the stage where I guess I am bringing people back home to themselves again, you know.
Yeah.
Just through this conversation, I'm like, God, actually, that's the embodiment piece in a way. Yeah. And then the third stage is right, okay, well, having done this bit, the third section is never too late to create. And that section is much more playful, actually. So, you know, I'm talking about whimsy and delight and, you know, all these kind of really delicious, evocative, playful. I didn't know about the ADHD when I wrote any of that, which is hilarious because this is all the stuff I'm really tuning into now. But it's also about rituals, but in a really beautiful, heart-led, soul-led way, because rituals are really fundamental to how we shape our lives. And that's a big thing I work with people with as well. And then I also talk a lot about sovereignty, surrendering to sovereignty. So there is a bit of it is for our times as well. You know, I am talking about the big turning point of the world and the shift in paradigms, kind of that masculine paradigm to more the feminine paradigm. And my books take 3 years to write, so it's a lived, breathed experience. It takes a long old time, but we're there now, pretty much.
I love it. Well, it's a birth. There's a gestation period. It is a very divine feminine process of giving birth to a book.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. So is it possible for people to work with you now? What are you doing? Are you holding sessions for folks? And can you talk a little bit about that?
That's a really good question. And I'm coming on a podcast, and at the current time, I've pressed pause on everything. However, I am creating something that I've, again, envisaged for a really long time, called the Magical Soul Snug. And it's bringing together, it's going to be kind of introvert-friendly gatherings, mostly online, because I do have a lot of people who are in my community who are over in the States and in Canada, have a few people in Australia, a few people across Europe as well. I will do some in-person stuff as well. But I think it's going to be a really lovely journey. I'm looking at doing like a 9-month container, but it's not, nobody has to join for 9 months. So I'm going to do 3 lots of 90 days. It's going to be like little mini missions, mini adventures. It's going to be quite playful.
I love that.
The 3 sections will be based around the 3 sections in the second book. And I'm bringing in moonology. I trained in moonology. I live by the moon. I have done for years. In the first book, I wrote about the 4 M's, and they were they've changed actually now. They were meditation, movement, morning pages, mantras, but now I've got moonology, and I don't really do quite so many mantras anymore. But it's going to be really aimed a lot at helping people get out of their head into their heart, but also people who really want to create and express in some way. So yeah, I think it's going to be lovely. It's going to be seasonal. It's going to be shaped around the moon cycle, bringing together that moon energy, movement, as it will be Koya, because I love Koya, meditation, journaling practices, but just being in circle, being together with like-minded souls. And that's as much as I know right now.
That's exciting. Well, we will update it in the show notes and update it when we go live for you, and so everybody will have the details.
Yes,
and the details of how to get a hold of you on your website and on Instagram, and we'll have all of that in the show notes.
Yeah, and it's so blessed that you shared kind of your journey, your story, kind of your revelation. It's beautiful to watch you kind of take it in and come at it in such a bright way that you know, it's, I think for anyone learning something about themselves that may have a stigma around it or may, you know, cause harm or hurt from a social standpoint even, to come at it with the way you're, with such grace, and it's beautiful to hear. It really is. So thank you for being a beautiful example of taking in the things that life throws at you and making the very best of it. So I love it.
Thank you. I really received that. Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, that means the
Well,
world.
thank you, Helen. It was lovely to have you today. It was a beautiful conversation, and I know our audience will love it as much as we did. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. I've loved it.
Wonderful.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
See you, everyone.